Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We did sports for a long time. I tell you what, Monday night makes me want to quit sports. But I'll be back on the beat this week. It is the R week word this week, and I actually threw a note out to a guest. I got admonished for using the R word. But Lamar was the word on Monday night, and Patrick Mahomes was really the word on Monday night. Luke Jones was up late. He, along with Steve Young and a handful of other friends, got to witness a game. Luke, I can't believe that I almost wanted the box lunch on Monday night. And, I guess I had, like Donald Trump, I had the right to throw you out, but I'm like, I'll let Luke go. I'm glad you went, not me. I watched the fireworks from outside. That was really a letdown. As we all sort of rub the sleep out of our eyes here in a short week, getting ready for the Redskins, that was eye-opening, wasn't it?
It really was. And I want to caution everyone, it's week 3. I can remember the 2000 Ravens going 5 straight games without scoring a touchdown. I can remember the 2012 Ravens getting blown out by Denver in December and Joe Flacco being face down on the turf after a pick 6. But that was disappointing. And for the reasons that we discussed throughout the week, this team went 14-2 last year. They choked in the playoffs. Let's call it what it was. Marlon Humphrey's words, not mine. They choked in the playoffs. And the 0-2 postseason mark, we talked about something they can't do anything about until January. The one thing that you looked at on this schedule was the Kansas City Chiefs. 2 years ago, they go to Arrowhead. Rookie Lamar Jackson, this weird rushing attack. They take the Chiefs to overtime. And the defense played a really good football game, held Kansas City to 24 points in regulation. Last year, not as competitive, although the final score was a 5-point game. The Ravens were constantly 2 possessions down in that game. And I think the defense, a less representative, less competitive effort. But this one at home, Ravens coming off of the big season, as we mentioned. Kansas City looking solid against Houston, certainly not looking like anything special against the Chargers in week 2, and everyone's saying, okay, the Chiefs are vulnerable, and they can't do this, they can't do that. Their linebackers look bad. They couldn't stop the run. Well, they didn't stop the run on Monday night, but we'll get to that. But just not an impressive representative effort. Playing at home, fans or no fans, you're in your own building. Kansas City traveled for the 2nd straight week, and they were outclassed. I mean, let's call it what it was. They were out, and you hear coaches and players say these types of things after frustrating losses, but they truly were outplayed and they truly were outcoached. And I think what's frustrating about it is being week 3, you wanted to think, okay, the Ravens are right there with Kansas City, and maybe they will be down the line, and they run into them in January, and it'll be a different outcome. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen from this point forward, but I think it's very clear the Ravens are still a step behind, at least, against Kansas City. And, not to put all the blame on Lamar Jackson, because I think that was a pretty top-to-bottom 53-man roster kind of showing, save for a few guys here and there. But I think Patrick Mahomes put to rest who the best quarterback in the NFL is right now. And maybe not right now in terms of 2020, because Russell Wilson would have something to say over the first few weeks. But by and large, looking at it in the big picture sense, Patrick Mahomes clearly showed that he's still the guy at the top of the mountain, reigning Super Bowl MVP 2 years ago. And I think the Ravens really saw that they have some work to do on both sides of the ball. And I can remember, Nestor, throughout the week in Miami when we were down there for the Super Bowl, anytime we talked about the Ravens, the question that we kept talking about is, how can this team function at a higher level when they get off schedule? And I'm not necessarily talking about 2 touchdowns down, because most teams are in serious trouble when you fall down 14 points. But when your initial plan, the famous line, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right?
Well, we talked all week about what happens if they're losing 14-3.
Right.
And they were only not losing 14-3 because the kicker missed an extra point, right? And then he missed a field goal too, right? So the final score really wasn't all that indicative, but they fell behind. They fell behind early, and the energy level, right? Like whatever the stadium would look or feel like during those playoff games that that they spit up at home that we've all, we were out there witnessing that. That was a long walk down to the locker room after the Chargers game, was a long walk down to the locker room after the Titans game. But the energy level, it never felt like it was there for them on Monday night from the fireworks on. And, I walked through the city about 5:30. My wife and I just went for a walk. I don't know if you noticed, but it rained for a couple of minutes and a rainbow came out. Like all these things happened at 5:30, 6:30. And there was no one anywhere, man. Like, we literally thought like some people down in Fed Hill would like be out drinking or walking around or running over to Checker, whatever the thing it's called over there. We walked all through the area where people would be. And it wasn't only like it wasn't a game day. It was like church mouse quiet. Like not even normal people outside just sitting on the stoop at 6 o'clock. Not even like people walking their dogs. Like, swear to God, I didn't even see a whole bunch of dogs. And we walk a lot through the city. It was an eerie, spooky, sort of quiet night. And I did wonder, like, man, they all show up in this empty thing with the lights. So it's one thing Sunday, 1 o'clock, the Browns, whatever, they came out with some energy. Everybody I talked to in Kansas City last week said they got off the plane in L.A. last week and, walked into this giant stadium, and it was like it wasn't a real game for a little while. I never got that feeling on Monday night, right? Like Monday night, the fact that nobody was there, the lights were on, the fireworks were going off, it's Lamar, it's Mahomes. I really didn't see that the kind of energy that I saw around the team last year, just from a pep and step, even when things were going right. And a couple things went right, at least, in the beginning, first drive for sure, but to the end. But the energy level, do you say that? Or, and for me, not being in a stadium that's completely empty, well, you could say, well, of course, dummy, it doesn't have any energy. But they piped that fake sound in on TV, and I don't know, the whole effort felt really flat for me for a John Harbaugh. That was rock bottom for a John Harbaugh in a big game. Not even the playoff games. But I thought like something smelled funny to me Monday night.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I think you could be onto something there as far as the primetime game. Think about it. Sunday, 1 o'clock, Sunday, 4:05 or 4:25. You can still, even if it feels more practice or scrimmage-like, I think you can still buy into that. But you're right from the standpoint of, we always talk about for Sunday night and Monday night, and especially Monday night games, because there are no games going on during the day. But you always hear players talk about the challenge of waiting around, right? You're in the hotel room and you're looking at the clock and you have lunch. And unlike normal circumstances, you're not going out to get a cup of coffee or to go take a walk for a half hour.
They are the
You're
weirdest days. Being a guy who's been on the road for those Monday nights, you sit in a hotel all day. All the games are over. You're waiting around. And psychologically, you're like, well, hell, we got to play again on Sunday. You know what I mean? Like, before you even play, you're thinking about your body clock of what hot tub am I going to be on Wednesday and hope we win tonight, right?
Right. So, and to be clear, this is where someone like Buck Showalter would say, well, that would be very convenient if we allow it to be an excuse.
They're professional. We're professionals.
But it very much, it definitely felt like it was lacking in that way. And, they had 250 family members. I mean, as I pointed out to someone, at 0.35% capacity. So, come on. People were asking if that crowd was going to make much of an impact. It's just not enough people in that big of a stadium. But
reminds me of the Dundalk sidelines when we played Damascus that night. We had 250 of us there. They had 22,000.
But you do look at this, and whether they were flat, whether they're lacking energy. For me, they got really uneasy really quickly, right? They first 6 carries, 60 yards. Lamar has a 30-yard scramble, and you're thinking, okay, they're in business. They're in the red zone. And, they shift to throwing the football, and, they had no success throwing the ball the entire evening. That was as poor as the Ravens' passing attack has looked since the Chargers game, the playoff game. That they just couldn't get anything done whatsoever. But it just, I don't know. The way that they, and look, this is conjecture and subjective and just how you perceive it, but it felt very much like, here we go again. We're a big game, a big opportunity. These are the guys that got us each of the previous 2 years. And all of a sudden, it's not going well. They score a touchdown. And from the coaching staff to the players, it felt like there was some panic that set in. There was some uneasiness very quickly, even at the point where the scoreboard wasn't out of control by any means. And it just, Greg Roman, I feel much like the Tennessee game, I think there was probably a stronger argument to be made that they got away from the rushing attack way too quickly in that first half. Again, you look at 6 carries for 60 yards, and then I think I saw someone pass along over the next 20 snaps or so. I think they dropped back 16, 17 times. It's just they were running the ball successfully. They were moving the ball really well, and much like we talked about in the first half of last year's game against Kansas City, there was a sense of getting away from who you are and feeling compelled to try to play like the Chiefs play. I mean, the Chiefs didn't run the ball with any level of consistency over the course of 60 minutes. They had some runs here and there, but it was their passing game. And it felt like even after that first drive where they ran the ball so well, it felt like the Ravens, whether they'd admit it or not, at least subconsciously, Greg Roman and this offense, it felt like they felt compelled that they had to pass. And it just felt too quick in that regard. But, regardless, you got to be more productive than they were. Lamar Jackson finishes the day with under 100 passing yards, way too many drops. Mark Andrews, Lamar's the one who gets the attention. He's the quarterback. He's the reigning MVP. I get that. But we've now seen Mark Andrews in some big games have some drops and do some uncharacteristic things. There's just, I don't know if it's a block, a mental block. I don't know if it's something in their psyche. I don't know if it's the fact that they're still very young in certain positions, but it just felt like things started to go wrong, and it just unraveled very, very quickly to the point where it shouldn't have, because we're not talking about the point where they're trailing by multiple scores. They fall behind after Mahomes runs in the touchdown. They miss the extra point at 6-3. But even at that point, it felt like the way they were playing, it felt like it was getting away from them already. And that's concerning, especially when you're playing at home, whether there are fans there or not.
Luke Jones is here. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. I'm going to take a moment to thank all of our WNST sponsors for making the transition to Baltimore Positive. We're about to do that. You'll be seeing the lights come on in the new building here this week as I venture down I-95 in the Parkway to chat WFT or WTF. I'm not sure what it is. All are brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing. Billy Cole will be here a little later on in the week. He's got his own special spot on the Baltimore Positive website, as does Leonard Raskin from Raskin Global. I am wearing the blue shirt here. It was not for the Kansas City Royals, although Jeff Montgomery liked that and was quite the fun text buddy of mine during the game on Monday night. As the only good saving grace is that Montgomery might buy me some barbecue out in Kansas City if we have to go out there and play, Luke, in January. So I know you know about the Kansas City barbecue. Planet Fitness, that's where I'm going to work it off. Planet Fitness is open. Safe, socially distanced. Go read up all about it on the website at planetfitness.com. If you haven't been in lately, stop by, check them out. Still affordable, still around the corner, still local. And we're going to have Victor Brick on talking about the John W. Brick 5K and all the updates to all the things going on in COVID that's changed everyone. My best to our friends at Planet Fitness, still getting people in shape and working out and working in. Royal Farms, still power me up with the Kona Blend coffee here in the morning, as well as the fried chicken. I was driving through Hamden on Monday, and I almost went in. Now, you can get 8-piece white or 10-piece dark, $12, or you can get the sandwich for $5. But I was all about the tenders. So I've been talking a lot about the tenders. Don't ask me why, just because they're good. Because I'm so used to getting the 2-piece or the 3-piece and getting the Western fries. The tenders. Don't sleep on the tenders at Rofo. And our friends at Sporticulture, I don't know what's going on with the magma. The lamp hasn't been on long enough to create real magma. It looks more like dead lava, to be honest with you right now. Such is the day after we lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. But you can get a magma lamp. Go to Sporticulture. They also have real flowers. They smell better. My cat loves them better. They're purple. They're gold. And send a red one to the Chiefs fan of your choice. This week, the burgundy and gold, and a short week. And Luke, for me, this is where Lamar's going to start taking the arrows, right? If mom didn't like it when they wanted to make him a wide receiver a couple of years ago, and the Heisman Trophy, and where he got drafted, he comes in, he's going to sit behind Flacco for 5 minutes, then he's going to come out and be boy wonder, right? Then it's every affirmation, you're the man, you're the man, you're the man. Lose to the Chargers, not the man. Go out last year, beat everybody by 50 points, sitting on the bench, shoulder pads off in the fourth quarter like a you the man, you the man, you the man. Then the Titans game happens. This game here will be, he can win the next 7 weeks. He can go dipsy-do, razzle-dazzle against the Bengals. He can throw a Mahomes Jedi. He can do whatever he wants for the next 8 weeks. If they're 15-1 in December, they're going to talk about this game because the only time he's going to win a game that matters the next time, it's going to be a game like this, and he's going to have to play better. And I'm sure he'll play better this week. I mean, I'm not burying Lamar. He always comes back. He always gets better. But this one should hurt his feelings. And he looked like he wanted no part of the podium after the game. Harbaugh looked like he wanted no part of the podium after the game. Again, they're not standing in front of anybody, right? Not like the leader of the free world. They can just walk out when they get asked about their taxes. There's nobody there to look at. So the next couple of days and this week, wherever it is for Lamar, the body language, the beating of the floor, the looking harried and harassed and all of that stuff late in the game, we beat up Flacco around here for being Joe Cool. I need to see a little Lamar Cool when you're down 10 points late in the game. In order to win, there needs to be a little bit more zen than what I saw in the last 6 minutes of the game. And I saw you tweet something I don't usually see you tweet. You tweeted something like, what was that?
Yeah, I mean, it just looked very out of whack. He specifically, I mean, again, this was a team loss. Let's be very clear about that.
If they're going to come back,
of course,
it's going to be because he has some zen about him.
He's the league MVP. And I'll keep saying this. For me, it's not even about being down 2 touchdowns and needing to see him do what Patrick Mahomes does. Very few quarterbacks do that. And other than Mahomes, no one does it regularly. I mean, it's just that you just don't see that a whole lot. Maybe Brady in his prime. Peyton Manning was someone who was knocked a lot for not being able to overcome and adjust when he getting punched in the face, so to speak. But
well, Phillip Rivers, his body language, he's never won. And then I think there's something to being composed. I mean,
yeah. I think, but it's a fair point. It's
Tom Brady's always calm in his mind. It's like Stillwater, baby, right? I mean,
well, you have to be able to function at a higher level when things aren't going your way. And I don't mean him specifically. I mean for the team. But he is the leader, and he's the quarterback, and he's the league MVP, and it just wasn't good. And there were some instances in the second half when, they looked confused. They tried to play some up tempo, and you could tell on a couple occasions, especially when he took the back-to-back sacks at one point. You could tell half the players on the field, it didn't seem like they knew what they were doing. Like, it didn't look like they knew what the play was. And it really looks like something that they need to work on, some of these scenarios where the going is getting tough, so to speak, when they're off schedule. It's a term I'm going to continue to use. We know the Ravens formula. When they're going at their absolute best, they run the ball early in the game, they get a lead, their defense dictates tempo, and they're playing downhill and fast, and they're bringing their style of game to the equation. When that doesn't happen, this team is now getting very much a reputation. We've talked about it the last 2 years in January, and we've seen it on this occasion. We've seen it a couple other times before, not often. Keep in mind, this team's done a lot of winning the last couple years and very little losing, but they just have a tendency to really, when the wheels come off, they fall off really quickly. And you just saw it once again on Monday night, and that's absolutely a fair criticism of him. Again, being very clear, teams fall behind 2 or 3 scores. Very rarely do they come back in those scenarios. I mean, what Patrick Mahomes does is not the norm. That's the absolute exception. But if the Ravens truly want to get to the promised land and not just get to the Super Bowl, but win in the playoffs, win some playoff games, get deeper into January, you're going to be faced with at least a scenario or two where things aren't going your way and you're facing some adversity, and they haven't handled those situations very well. And to their credit, those situations have been very rare. The whole point is not to fall behind by 2 touchdowns. The whole point's not to fall behind by 17 points. Pat Mahomes will be the first to tell you when the Chiefs have been in those scenarios that that's not ideal, and it never is. But when it happens, you have to be able to function at a higher level as a football team. And we didn't see that. Certainly did not see it from the offense. We'll get into the defense in greater detail. They didn't. They got their butts kicked. A couple stops to start the second half. That was about it. That was the only thing they could hang their hat on. But this team is just so good at playing their style of game, and it's good enough against virtually every team in the league. And that's reflective of 12 straight regular season wins to close the year last year, 14-2. But when you run into those select few, and to this point, it's been Kansas City and it's been Tennessee in the playoffs. But even that game, they moved the ball pretty consistently. They had some very poorly timed mistakes. This was a scenario where they just couldn't get anything going consistently. The one thing that they were doing well early on, they got away from, and then it got to the point where they were so far behind that, at that point, the run is going to be taken out of the equation. But it just, when things go poorly, it feels like it just goes through the entire team at that point, and they just haven't been able to recover.
Well,
and
this
it's something they're
speaks
going
to
to figure
Lamar
out.
and being able to come back. You know what I mean? And having a comeback like Mahomes had last year, in Kansas City against Houston, against anyone. The comeback part of all of this is what even makes Tom Brady on a bad day, or Peyton Manning on a bad day. At some point, you have to will your team back into the game and give yourself a chance to win. There was that period of time last night where it felt like they got straightened out and sort of came back. Then the defense came on, and we'll let the defense be a part of that. But for Lamar and picking up the pieces, you can't do that against the Redskins. I don't think there's anything to prove against them this week, right?
I totally agree with you, and that's why I said I thought that this game was so important. Not in the sense of, clearly you can talk about the number 1 seed and the fact that there's only one first-round bye now, and it makes that race that much more critical, because you're not just talking about where you're playing for the AFC Championship potentially, but you're talking about whether you're playing the first weekend in January or not. I guess this year it would be the second weekend in January, because the season finishes January 3rd. But I think there's a psyche, a mental element to this for this team because of how last year played out. They went 14-2. They had the league MVP. They had 13 guys make the Pro Bowl. They set franchise and NFL records. They accomplished everything you can accomplish in the regular season short of going undefeated. And, clearly that's not on the table anymore. So to your point, you look at the next several weeks at Washington, home against the Bengals, at Philadelphia, even home against Pittsburgh. And look, the Steelers are in first place right now, and we'll talk about that. And they've looked good, and certainly their offense.
You had to bring that up,
better.
didn't you? I've made it the whole segment without bringing that up. Yeah.
But even with them, I'm still not buying Pittsburgh as being in the class of the Kansas City Chiefs, who very much reestablished themselves that they're the team to beat. We can keep talking about the Ravens going 14-2 and their offense setting all these records. Kansas City's gotten the job done, and the Ravens haven't. That's just the hard truth at this point. And Monday night reaffirmed that. But you look at those next 4 games. If you're sitting there right now and telling me that the Ravens go 4-0 over the next 4 weeks, I won't bat an eyelash over that. I'll believe that.
You're not going to pick against them the way you did on Monday.
No. Well, I didn't pick them to. I picked a loss, but not like that.
Luke,
so I'm not going to take
chose
credit.
wisely.
But your point is so well taken, and I think it's what's so frustrating now for this team in the big picture macro sense is there's not a win on the schedule the rest of the way. Even if they go, to your point, even if they go 15-1, not that they wouldn't impress me, but isn't going to change the reality that they were facing going into Monday night. 0-2, now 0-3 against the Chiefs, and 0-2 in the playoffs. Nothing
Lamar comes to the podium and says kryptonite on Monday night, literally.
And he's right. He's right. I think what's frustrating about this, and I haven't mentioned this at this point, so I'm glad you brought it up, but they're getting further away. As it relates to Kansas City, the game they played 2 years ago at Arrowhead when Lamar was a rookie, I mean, that was out of these three performances, that was easily the best performance they had. And I think the difference, if you go back and look at that game, I think they hit Patrick Mahomes 15 times. I think they had 3 or 4 sacks. Zadarius Smith had quarterback hits in that game. Terrell Suggs had quarterback hits in that game. Judon had a good game that day. But
C.J. Mosley was on the team.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very different team at that point. And they weren't a championship team, but every year it's gotten progressively worse to the point now where even without any fans, you're still playing in your own stadium. Kansas City was still the team that traveled halfway across the country, and that's the performance you have. I mean, it's disappointing in that way. And that's not to say things won't be different come January if these teams cross paths again. So much can happen between now and then. But to your point, whether it's Washington or Cincinnati or Philadelphia, I fully expect the Ravens to win these games. And frankly, I'll say it right now, I feel sorry for the Washington football team because I think the Ravens are going to they are going to boat race them. It's going to be ugly, but because that's what the Ravens do against inferior teams. But what is that game doing in terms of making you think that what happened on Monday night is going to be a different outcome in January?
Well, you hope Kansas City's going to have to stumble. Otherwise, we're going to have to go out there and get some barbecue. It's just as simple as that. Luke is here. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. You can find all of our coverage at Baltimore Positive as we merge our streets. We're going to talk more about the defense. We're going to talk more about Harbaugh and Andy Reid. We're going to talk more. We haven't mentioned Patrick Mahomes enough. We talk so much about Lamar Jackson. We'll certainly do that. You can find Luke out on the internet. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all of those places. And along with Don Moeller, portaling into Baltimore Positive. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports and Baltimore Positive.